Hi, this is Jim,
And Ralph.
and we welcome you to Psychology Takeaway, the podcast where we look at new things in psychology or old things that might be relevant today and try to make them relevant to you.
And to us.
Hi, Ralph. How are you today?
I'm well today, Jim. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, it was pretty interesting last 2 weeks with Father Matt.
It was.
What our listeners don't know is that we talked to him in the hallway after the second podcast, the one that went up on Wednesday, and he had some really good questions for us, which stimulated this podcast and even next week's podcast.
Yeah, and this week we're going to talk about self-sabotage. Now, it's an interesting, baffling, frustrating, and oddly common habit of a lot of people, because a lot of people, when life seems to be going well, they do the thing or things that are going to mess up their life.
Kind of like derailing the train,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Yeah, and we can do a real quick list of them. Some that I can think of. One I'll talk about a little bit later on. That's perfectionism. That's one.
That's one.
The imposter syndrome is another.
Fear of success.
Fear of success, not just a fear of failure. Yeah.
Cognitive distortions,
Mm-hmm.
where people tend to look at events and take the worst case scenario that could possibly happen.
Yeah. Or in the case of Oak Island, they take the best case scenario, which might not be realistic. We've talked
Yeah.
about Oak Island before with
Yeah.
the confirmation bias. Okay.
So depression,
Mm-hmm.
trauma.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, people who have trauma in childhood don't realize the effect that has on them until they might be fully adult.
Right. And coping with some of the stresses of full adulthood, and all of a sudden the trauma sort of kicks in.
Yeah. So let's go back for a moment and say, okay, why might, other than the kind of little things that we've given you, why might people self-sabotage? And one of the keys to that is that it's an unconscious thing.
Uh-huh.
People don't consciously think, I'm going to screw myself up.
No, I guess that's probably right. They consciously think that, hey, everything will be okay, right?
Yeah. Now, I'll give you a classic example of self-sabotage for myself. I had been teaching for, 30 years. And our president at the university I was teaching had called for a general faculty meeting. So the whole 300 of the faculty were there in a big auditorium.
Mm-hmm. Now,
And-
I hasten to add that the president was somebody that both you and I knew real well. We had gone to school with him, right?
We had. And
So you
he
were
st-
familiar with this
yeah,
guy on
and
a
he
different
stood
level.
up and said something. And
Yes.
as a good union bloke, I stood up and said, Mr. President, that turns out not to be true.
Uh-huh. That would be like somebody in the cabinet saying that to our current president.
Yes.
Okay, we
And
know what would happen there.
guess what? I paid for that statement for the next 5 years until I retired.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a classic example of self-sabotage.
Okay, didn't get your bonus pay at Christmas, right?
Yeah, you want to believe it?
Yeah, a good example. Now, why did you say that?
I said that because what he had said was simply
Incorrect.
wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't let that stand. I was trying to be ethical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes good ethics
You could have done it
done
in a different way.
correctly
Yeah.
are better than good ethics done incorrectly.
Okay. Yeah. So Hey, something else that occurs to me here is that this was at a meeting, and there were 300 of you. So the adrenaline, cortisol must have been pumping.
It was. And, this was at a time when, like a lot of universities in Michigan right now, funding for our university was being reduced.
Well, never heard that one before.
And so, what the president was saying is, we are going to cope with this reduction in funding by, and what he said was wrong.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And so I called him on it. Well, that's not a thing to do in front of 300 people who are sitting there like a flock of sheep prepared to listen and make no protest.
Okay, I understand. So that's one good example. Another example of self-sabotage is procrastination. And how many of you out there in the audience listening have something, a deadline? The deadline is tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and you don't start on your project until tonight at 10 o'clock, and you have to work all night. Work in the morning. You're looking at your watch. It's almost 10 o'clock, and so you get it out, whatever it might be, and it's not your best work. Oh, by the way, folks, at the bottom there, you'll see like, subscribe, and share. Please push a button and like us, subscribe to our podcast, and hey, pass it on to a buddy, okay?
Yeah, and when you subscribe, it really helps us out, and it costs you nothing.
Okay, so there's the project that's due at 10 o'clock, and the material, cold, but you started late, and now, you're handing in something that's, not your best.
Yeah, and I think we've all done that in one way or another. And another classic example, Jim, is when I was teaching up north in Canada, we had a requirement that we give a minimum of 800 to 1,000 word essay every week.
Okay.
So figure this out. At the time, I was teaching 5 classes.
Okay, that's 5. I got it.
We had 35 students per class.
Okay, hang on. That's
165 students.
Okay.
So
Times
1,000 words every week.
Okay, so that's about 3 pages.
Around 3 to 4 pages.
Okay, let's go with 3. So that's 160 times 3 is about 550 or so.
Yeah. So it's the equivalent.
But there's a 0 on the end there. So
yeah,
okay.
It's the equivalent of a novel.
Mm-hmm.
A big novel.
Yeah.
And I made the mistake of procrastinating for a whole week.
Okay.
So the essays were due in last class day of the week. I didn't mark anything. The next week, last class day of the week, I got the essay in. Now I had 2 weeks worth.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So guess what I did all weekend?
What did you do all weekend, Ralph?
I marked. I wish I could say that I went down to the jazz festival and drank beer, but no, I marked all weekend.
Uh-huh.
So, you only hurt yourself by procrastination. It's a form of self-sabotage.
Right.
That a lot of people they say, I'll put that off just for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a similar story with doing therapy notes for the work that I was doing here in town, and I got behind, and I got really behind. It was one thing to have, to be maybe 10 notes behind you, but I was 100 behind. And so my boss came to me and said, Jim, you're 100 behind. If you don't shape it up and, get those caught up, we're not going to pay you. That's a powerful motivator for me. And so I worked for a week, on those 100 notes, doing what I was being paid for also, but having to do the work from before, which, because I did take good notes, I was able to do it. But it was just time consuming, very stressful. So the self-sabotage stuff will, I think, leads not to, hey, I feel good about it. I created time to go to the jazz festival, but ultimately it leads to increased levels of stress.
Yeah. And stress increases, your cortisol levels. It makes you anxious. It kind of invades your whole physical system, and you end up, kind of not being very, um, I won't say healthy, but not
Uh,
being very,
Not superbly healthy, at least.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Now, one of the things that we'll talk about is perfectionism. Now, it doesn't seem like a bad thing to want to be perfect. Unfortunately, how many of us can be perfect, Ralph?
almost nobody.
Almo-
The the last one was according to the Bible 2,000 some years ago.
Yes, indeed. Maybe we need Father Matt to come back and talk about that one, I suppose.
Yes,
But yeah, so if you're seeking perfection, you're seeking something that is, an
impossible.
illusion. Yeah. It's like Sheila and I have been seeking the best cinnamon roll in Michigan for, 50 years now. We still haven't found the best one. We're looking for the perfect cinnamon roll. Well, that's pretty trivial. But if you were, doing something that was really important and you needed, perfection, hey, guess what, folks? You ain't going to get it here, right?
Yeah. Now, one of the things, Jim, that leads me to talk about, so people who have perfectionism and they get involved in a relationship, they look for and think that they're entering a relationship which is perfect.
Yeah.
How many of us have sabotaged our own relationships in one way or another?
You know, it's kind of interesting, Ralph, that we talked, I think, last week about fear of intimacy. Well, one of the ways you can handle this fear of intimacy, if indeed that's one of your fears, is to push people away.
Yeah.
So that Alex is here. We have a whole new setup here. You notice the cameras are going back and forth. Phil was in looking at it and talking to us about how easy this is, and it's streamlined, and
We're getting there.
we're just we're getting confused. Anyhow, I mentioned sabotaging relationships, and you snickered. What's up?
It's okay, Jim. We're not all perfect. We're all just learning. Oh, it was just really hitting home. I wish I had this book a couple years ago. I definitely fell victim to that before. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
You hold your spouse in unrealistically high standards.
Yeah. And you put your partner on a pedestal,
Yeah.
and then you realize that the bottom of the pedestal is made of sand, and they fall.
At
And
least
then
it's
you
a soft
say,
landing.
"Oh, they fell." Gee. And then do you rush to pick them up? Well, that's what you should do. Or you might say, "Hey, you fell. That's not good.
Not perfect.
Not perfect. And you're
Mhm.
perfect. You're supposed to be perfect."
Uh-huh.
And
does-
then they look at you and say, "Hey,
Yeah, I just fell.
I
Give me a
just
hand.
fell. Why are you chewing at me?" And the
Why do
next
we
thing
do
you
this?
know, you're at loggerheads and you're passing each other in the hallway and saying nasty things.
How do we fall into this, and how do we fall out of it? How do we correct as well?
That's a good question. You're kind of like the pastor last week asking good questions and not
I saw one of your notes was give them permission
The-
to
to
give yourself permission and give them permission to
Oh.
not be perfect.
Okay,
But
so
what do you think it is that makes us even fall into this in the first place? Is it
so Alex is here reading
work?
the book.
Well, to me, one of the things is that, here's an interesting family story. My father really wanted me to either be a doctor or an engineer. Well, to be a doctor at that time, you had to be really good at chemistry. I wasn't. To be an engineer, you had to be really good at mathematics. I wasn't. But I could be a really good student of English and psychology. He thought those were terrible non-studies. And so I spent a lot of time trying to be perfect for him
for him?
In math and science.
in math and science and falling down and failing. But he never said, hey, it's okay for you to be who you are. And so what I learned was I try to be perfect and I can't be perfect. So I'm going in another direction. But I think a lot of people who are good enough to be kind of perfect in the way they go keep trying to be perfect. And so then you say, okay, I'm looking for the perfect partner.
Do you believe that perfection is an illusion? We never, they say practice makes perfect, but I think that is such a
That's a cliche.
It's a cliche, and it
yeah.
doesn't help anybody. I
No.
think
Well-
practice makes better. I think we should
I
start
think
saying.
that might be it.
And the other thing that's incomplete, because the thing that you have to say is not practice makes perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect.
So you can have bad practice too.
You can have bad practice.
So if
you
I
can
strum the
repeat
guitar every
errors.
day and keep doing the same mistakes, I'm not getting any better.
Yeah.
I think
And
not.
the other thing is
You got to learn
that-
how to learn.
Yeah. So the other thing that you can say is, okay, perfect practice will make me perfect. The other thing is you can't practice until you get it right. You have to practice until you can't get it wrong.
What if we never get it right? What if we don't know what right is?
That's where
so we've
most,
just wasted all
that's
this
where
time
most
doing the
people
thing.
Are. They go through life saying,
I don't know if this is more helpful or less. No.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to be perfect. I don't know what, and that leads to, I think, some of the self-sabotage stuff is.
It's just learning how to do it right in the first place that's so hard. I mean, like, you made it sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you have a big value judgment here. Like you're twanging the guitar is somehow wrong.
Which
And
is kind of like living life. That's like a metaphor for living life. I might be twanging the strings,
Yeah.
thinking I'm making music. But
well, okay, well, maybe the world will help you out here. I was a drummer in a rock and roll band when I was in high school. Okay, and I was not a very good drummer, so you can see your point. The drummers of the day were Gene Krupa and people like that. I mean, they could make music on their drums, and I couldn't. I could go boom, boom, and the lead guitar player of the group, a guy named Rudy, said one day, "That Carol, he can't drum." Rudy was from Germany. He don't know how to drum. And it was right, but it was enough. And a few years later,
you threw in the drumsticks at that.
a few years later, I would have been the premier drummer in the world. Know why? Ringo Starr came along.
He
And
couldn't
Ringo
drum
Starr
either.
drummed just like me. So sometimes the world will correct, you. With your bad twang in the guitar, who knows? Dwayne Eddy might come along and do the same twang, and hey, all of a sudden, Alex M. and Dwayne Eddy are stars.
I've also heard that perfectionism is it's like overcompensating for a stress. You can't control some things in your life, some aspects, so you're trying to control others. And I've also heard it's a symptom of like ADHD, it's like or having a perfectionism type parent where they're
Yeah.
like that over.
Well, I think-
like you experienced,
Yeah, like Ralph was talking about. And so I think what you have to do is give people permission to be themselves, permission to make mistakes. I think, well, we've used Edison many times in the show, but Edison wasn't really upset when he couldn't come up with the filament for his light bulb. Somebody said, aren't you, you made so many mistakes. And he said, well, what I've learned is that these 1,000 ways won't work, but there's some way out there that will work.
Another misconception is, though, that he didn't actually make those thousands. He had like a sweatshop of scientists and engineers.
Oh, definitely.
So it's a little less taxing for him personally when he's like, "Oh, you haven't done it yet, Edison." Well, yeah, I have 500 people working on it. They're working on it,
Well, look,
but I get your metaphor.
You're controlling
you're
controlling the camera. How about a close up on my shirt?
On your shirt?
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see here. Number
There it
one,
is, right there.
you want to zoom into the
to the logo. Okay. There's an example. Oops, where am I? I don't know.
other
There
side,
I am.
yeah.
Okay, there's an example of not perfectionism, but of
Branding.
perseverance.
Perseverance.
And so you can't, I don't know how many teams haven't been to the Super Bowl, but I know that team has not been to the Super Bowl. But hey, each year, hope springs eternal, right?
New year, new team,
Yeah.
sometimes a new coach.
Yep. New attitude, we hope. Okay, so what's the bottom line here, Ralph, with self-sabotage? I know fear of failure. We don't want to fail.
That's
right.
Yeah, fear of success.
But fear of success, we might, get successful at something, and that's going to be out of our comfort zone, right?
Yeah. And, thinking of comfort zones, I mean, most people in North America live, if not payday to payday, they live with a feeling that they're limited by the amount of income they have. And one of the interesting things is if you win a huge amount in the lottery, the average person who wins over $5 million goes bankrupt within 5 years.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, I've heard that before also.
And one of the things about that is that learning how to manage money is one thing. Learning how to manage your friends and relatives who suddenly see you as the bank of give me is a whole different thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to be able to say, I have boundaries, I have limits, and I don't have unrealistic expectations of myself, either for failure or success.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit more about how you do break the cycle of self-sabotage. One way is to know that it's happening, right?
Yeah.
I'm giving away my money to my relatives and friends. This is not going to, work well in the end. 5 years from now, I'm going to be broke. So you have to learn to say, hey, it's not that I'm going to be greedy, but I'm just not going to sabotage myself.
Yeah. And there's a guy who's a financial advisor who talks about this, winning the lottery, winning large amounts of money in the lottery.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things he said is that put your money into some kind of trust, limited trust. And then if somebody comes to you, friend or relative, and says, could you help me out? You can then say to them, my money is in the trust fund. Take it to the trust advisor and make your request. I don't have anything to do with this. So I can't say no, I can't say yes, but if you have a legitimate thing that the trust advisor says, yeah, this is a good idea, hey,
yeah,
they'll give you the money.
Yeah. You're sitting here, Alex. I don't know about you two, but hey, with that 5 million that people win, hey, if I won 5 million, I'd give it a shot. You know, keep
Without a trust advisor.
Without a trust advisor. Yeah. Okay. How are we doing time-wise?
You're at 25 minutes.
Oh, okay. You know, we've looked at a topic that, came out from the hallway last week and chatting with Father Matt. And another thing he talked about or asked about was evil. Where does evil come from? What's the psychology of evil? So next week, Ralph, we're going to tackle that one.
Okay, and that's interesting, Jim, because Father Mac said that
Matt.
he felt that the church's idea of evil was actions that did not allow people to flourish, which is kind of positive psychology.
Okay, yeah. We'll take a look at that. And
But-
then coming down the pike, the week after, we're going to have Reed Scales on talking about careers in psychology and how to become licensed, I suppose, or certified in various fields so that you can work, in the human services field. And then sometime in October, we have the artist from the Baber Room, that's your room, right, Ralph?
Right.
Yeah. Talking about her very creative installation. So we've got some good stuff coming up. But
It should be fun. And today, leaving our listeners and viewers, I just want to say, watch for self-sabotage.
Well, this was a good show here today, Ralph. I hope our listeners and viewers enjoyed it. And I just want to say to you, hey, keep your stick on the ice.
Because we're all in this
Together.